Every story has villains, and World of Warcraft is no different. Standing above every big bad and cosmic titans is one character who refuses to die and will forever be immortal in the hearts of millions of players. Arthas Menethil, the fallen prince of Lordaeron, to many known as the Lich King. This is the story players still argue about 20 years later, the villain we compare every new expansion to. And this is really the tragedy gaming never topped. Today we're diving deep into why Arthas' fall still hits harder than any villain created, and why his humanity is the very reason he became the monster everyone loved. Before the Lich King and Frostmourne, Arthas was something painfully simple. A good kid trying too hard. He was raised to be the future king of Lordaeron, the shining jewel of the Eastern Kingdoms, and like every overachieving prince in fantasy, he had a legendary mentor, Uther, a magic woman he was in love with, Jaina, a kingdom expecting him to be the next Lothar, and the emotional stability of a wet noodle. People forget this, but Arthas wasn't born an evil guy. In my opinion, he is the clear-cut example of an anxious overachiever with the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. Who wouldn't crumble? I would. First, let's talk about Stratholme, because this moment is the turning point of the franchise. It's Arthas' whole character condensed into one nightmare decision. Choose between being a good man or being an effective leader. The plague reign is coming. His people will turn into zombies. Jaina hesitates, Uther refuses, and Arthas really is terrified of failing his kingdom, and makes the call that ruins his entire soul. We must purge the city. He says it without looking back, because if he did, he'd see everything he loves shatter. Many people in my comment section said he should have quarantined the city, but I would argue people in these kinds of situations don't think clearly. You see the apocalypse in front of your eyes. Of course you'd act in an instant to try and prevent something bigger. But the tragedy here is in the argument, because you can genuinely debate whether Arthas was right or wrong, and that's the moment Blizzard struck storytelling gold. A villain you can understand is always more terrifying. Really, people think Arthas was corrupted by Frostmourne, the magic sword. Yes, but the sword only finished what he already started. When Arthas chases Mal'Ganis to Northrend, he already made a decision to stop acting like a prince, already decided that ends justify means. Abandoned by his friends Uther and Jaina, he's really alone. And as I said in my last Arthas video, when the only voice left is your own, eventually you listen to any voice that answers back. He burns his ships, betrays his men, betrays Moradin, one of the nicest dwarves alive, and because he thinks winning will erase his mistakes, what I said earlier, the weight of the entire world on his shoulders, Frostmourne was just the comfort he was longing. But in reality, Arthas was tricked by Arthas. The sword was just whispering the thing he already believed. Only you can save them. Only you can do what must be done. He takes the blade, his soul shatters. And that's the day Prince Arthas truly dies. Here in the snow, Blade Runner style. You know, in that moment when a WoW player loses their hardcore character, that 2 seconds of silent disbelief. That's the exact emotion the world had when Arthas walked into Lordaeron again. He walks in the throne room, kneels down to his father, then murders him outright. The most chilling I'm evil now moment in video game history is just the son killing his father. The fall of Lordaeron is so iconic because it's a child coming home after losing who he was and making sure no one remembers him. You can chart Arthas' entire fall in this cold timeline. First he loses mercy, then he loses love, his soul, his father, then his name. By the time he ascends the frozen throne, there's nothing left to corrupt. Ner'zhul simply moves into the empty house, and the fusion of these two creates the most devastating force Azeroth has ever seen. There are theories here, not really confirmed lore per se, that Arthas' personality still tanks Ner'zhul's, and there is evidence to this that I'll talk about shortly. Arthas still has a glimmer of humanity inside his frozen heart. That's what makes him terrifying. He understands the people he destroys. He used to be them. Years later, when players finally reach ICC, really you meet a ghost. He tells you exactly why he let you come this far. I was saving you for the final test to see how strong you could become, so I could raise you as a Death Knight. He needs you to be strong, because really he believes the strongest servants make the best peace. And here's the part 99% of players miss, but it's the key to Arthas' entire tragedy. When you kill the Lich King, he can drop items, weapons with big stats, but some drops are special, confessions if you will. Jaina's locket, a necklace he kept from the girl he once loved, the one dream he never let go of, even as a monster. Sylvanas' music box, a melody from the woman he tormented into undeath, a reminder that every ghost he made still haunted him. Invincible, his childhood horse. These drops are the last proof Arthas never fully disappeared. The Lich King kept his memories. That's how you know the tragedy is real. Even at the end, Arthas still carried the people he failed. When Tyrion shatters Frostmourne and Arthas falls to the ground, gasping, we see just a boy calling for his father. Father, is it over? No king rules forever, my son. This is where every other WoW villain loses to Arthas, because his ending really is, in my opinion, about accepting failure. Arthas dies not as the Lich King, but as a scarred prince who didn't know how to fix anything. He tried to save everyone, but ended up saving no one. It's the most human death Blizzard ever wrote, and that's why it stays with me. Because Arthas' humanity still shapes World of Warcraft today. Seriously, like every time Blizzard tries to make a new villain, Zul'Var, Fyrakk, Xal'atath, they're all judged by one simple, impossible standard. Is this as good as Arthas? Well, no, none of them are even close. Because Arthas broke the world on a personal level. He scarred every faction, traumatized entire cultures, killed icons and resurrected them just to twist a knife. Even at the end, even at the literal climax of the entire storyline, Blizzard still reminded you that Arthas was someone's friend, someone's love, someone's son. No other villain leaves that kind of crater in the game world. And that's why even now, years later, the Lich King still commands more emotional weight than any threat Azeroth has ever faced. A ghost gaming still cannot outrun. Arthas hasn't been the main villain in over a decade, but he still dominates WoW conversations and even gaming in general. Why? Because Arthas is a mirror and a warning at the same time. He's what happens when love turns into obsession, duty turns into fanaticism, fear turns into control, and a hero stops asking whether he should, only whether he can. Modern WoW villains throw planets at you. Arthas threw his soul into the abyss and lost. This is really a tale similar to Artorias in Dark Souls, but that might be a topic for another video. And people relate to that more than any giant space wizard. Here's where I think I'm not the only one thinking this. Arthas is the only gaming villain whose story gets sadder the older you get. When you're 12, Arthas is cool because he's edgy and has a big sword. When you're older, he's cool because he's tragic. A young man crushed by a responsibility he wasn't ready for. And that's the most relatable thing Blizzard ever wrote. Because everyone at some point tries to do the right thing and ends up making everything worse. Arthas is the embodiment of that fear. That's why he lasted, why he still dominates the entire gaming scene, why every new villain gets compared to him and loses. Arthas looks cool on a metal album cover, sure, but he is memorable because he is us, just pushed further than we could ever bear. A hero who tried too hard, carried too much, lost too much, and made one decision he couldn't take back. And that's why the tragedy of Arthas Menethil is still the greatest villain arc gaming ever created. Thank you for watching. And remember, no king rules forever, but some stories will always do.